On a frigid February morning in 1944 over central Germany, the United States 8th Air Force dispatched hundreds of B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators to target industrial complexes escorted by P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs under Major General James Doolittle's command. The Luftwaffe, led by General Adolf Galland, countered with waves of Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds, intent on breaking the bomber formations before they reached their targets. Each B-17 carried 10 crewmen, including gunners, trained to operate 50 caliber machine guns in synchronized arcs, defending a formation stretching 1,000 yards wide at 25,000 feet. The sky churned with contrails, tracer streaks, and diving fighters as both sides executed meticulously planned tactics shaped by months of grueling attrition. Gunners on the bombers faced a punishing task track, fast-moving targets as their aircraft shuddered and enemy fighters closed at 300 miles per hour. United States doctrine stressed discipline. Each gunner covered a designated sector, firing short bursts to preserve ammunition and prevent barrel overheating. A single B-17 waist gun could unleash 600 rounds per minute, but only in controlled bursts to ensure accuracy. The number that matters is precision. Gunners held fire until fighters entered effective range about 800 yards to maximize lethal hits. Breaking formation was forbidden as isolated bombers invited swift destruction from coordinated Luftwaffe strikes. The Luftwaffe's Bf 109 seconds, armed with 20mm cannons, favored frontal assaults to exploit the bombers' weaker forward defenses. German pilots aimed to disrupt the combat box, a tight, staggered formation designed to interlock fields of fire before banking away to evade escort fighters. By 1944, the 8th Air Force had lost thousands of crewmen with a sortie survival rate of 70% for a full tour. Every mission tested the synergy between defensive gunnery and the expanding reach of United States escorts, which pursued attackers beyond the formation's perimeter. The stage was set for a brutal technical clash where extraordinary claims would face rigorous scrutiny against the realities of aerial combat. Cold line barrel cooling required pauses after 20 rounds. The air over Germany in 1944 was a crucible of precision and chaos, where United States gunners aboard B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds fought to hold their formations against relentless Luftwaffe assaults. Each bomber's crew operated as a single organism, with gunners trained to scan their sectors, waist, tail, ball, turret, and top turret through freezing winds and engine roar. The 8th Air Force's defensive doctrine was unforgiving: maintain the combat box fire only when sights aligned and trust adjacent aircraft to cover overlapping arcs. A single 50 caliber gun could fire 600 rounds per minute, but doctrine limited bursts to 10 to 15 rounds to avoid burning out barrels or exhausting ammunition before the return leg. Gunners learned to lead targets by judging closure rates, often waiting until enemy fighters filled their sights at 800 yards to ensure hits. The constraint was ammunition. A B-17 carried roughly 4,000 rounds per gun position, enough for sustained engagements, but not reckless spraying. Training emphasized tracking discipline. Gunners followed the curved path of a Bf 109, diving at 300 miles per hour, adjusting for deflection and aircraft vibration. Crews drilled relentlessly on the ground, memorizing clock positions and practicing smooth traverses to avoid jerking the gun off target. The system worked when every gunner held their sector. A single gap could invite a fighter to slip through and rake the formation with cannon fire. United States records show that disciplined gunnery increased survival rates, with 70% of bombers completing missions when escorts and tight formations held. Luftwaffe pilots observing from their cockpits saw the American formations as a wall of fire, each bomber's guns spitting tracers in coordinated bursts. Their Bf 109 seconds, agile and heavily armed, aimed to overwhelm with massed frontal attacks, often splitting into pairs to strike from multiple angles. German tactics relied on speed and surprise, closing to within 500 yards to fire 20mm cannons before peeling away. But the Americans' interlocking fire made such passes costly. German pilots cursed the tracer streams that tracked their dives with unnerving accuracy. This adversary perspective marked the turning point. Luftwaffe losses mounted as United States gunners refined their aim and escorts disrupted attack runs. Cold line. One gun jammed after 50 rounds without maintenance. The human element in this mechanical ballet was raw and visceral. Gunners, often young men barely out of training, sat in open positions or cramped turrets, their breath fogging in the unheated cabins at 25,000 feet. They described the enemy as dark specks growing into sleek shapes, cannon flashes blinking as fighters bore in head-on. Fear was constant, but training took over. Call out the bearing, steady the sight, squeeze the trigger for a 3-second burst, then track the next target. Veterans recalled the jolt of recoil, the smell of cordite, and the sight of a Bf-109 trailing smoke after a well-aimed shot. Multi-kill engagements were rare, and typically involved entire crews with waist and tail gunners converging fire on a single attacker over 10 to 15 seconds, not a lone gunner racking up improbable tallies. United States after-action reports were meticulous, requiring gunners to log rounds, fired hits observed, and enemy aircraft behavior. Claims of kills went through a rigorous process, cross-checked with other crew observations, escort pilot reports, and when possible gun camera footage or ground intelligence. Inflated claims were common in the heat of battle, as adrenaline and overlapping fire led multiple gunners to claim the same kill. Intelligence officers adjusted tallies downward, ensuring only verified destructions were credited. The absence of a documented 12-kill 4-minute spree by a single gunner aligns with this scrutiny. Such an event would have required extraordinary ammunition expenditure, perfect traverse timing, and immediate verification, none of which appear in contemporary records. The Luftwaffe, meanwhile, adapted to counter the improving American defenses. By mid-1944, German commanders shifted from massed line-abreast attacks to more complex patterns mixing altitudes and headings to confuse gunners. Some Bf-109 seconds carried rockets to break formations from a distance, forcing bombers to scatter and expose themselves to follow-up gun passes. The United States responded with tighter formations and better coordination with P-51 escorts, which could pursue attackers up to 400 miles from the formation. This synergy gunnery discipline, paired with escort aggression, gradually tilted the air war, reducing the Luftwaffe's ability to mount effective strikes. The number that matters is range escorts extended their reach to 400 miles, protecting bombers deeper into Germany. The skies over Germany in 1944 were a proving ground where the Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt Bf-109 seconds clashed with the United States 8th Air Force's bomber formations, each side adapting to the other's moves, in a deadly chess match. The Germans, under General Adolf Galland's direction, refined their attacks to exploit weaknesses in the American combat box, a formation designed to maximize defensive firepower across 1,000 yards of airspace at 25,000 feet. Bf-109 seconds, powered by Daimler-Benz engines, delivering 1,400 horsepower, could climb to intercept bombers in under 10 minutes, their 20mm cannons effective at 500 yards. Luftwaffe pilots trained to strike in waves, often splitting into pairs or small groups to approach from multiple angles, head-on beam or high rear, to overwhelm gunners before escorts could react. United States gunners strapped into their B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds countered with disciplined fire. Their 50-caliber machine guns, trained to track targets closing at 300 miles per hour. Doctrine demanded patience. Hold fire until 800 yards, lead the target, and fire bursts of 10 to 15 rounds to conserve the 4,000 rounds per gun position. The constraint was barrel where continuous firing risked jams or overheating, forcing gunners to pause and let barrels cool. Cold line barrels overheated after 100 rounds without pause. This limitation shaped engagements as gunners balanced accuracy against the need to maintain functional weapons through long missions. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, the American formations were a gauntlet of tracer. Fire each B-17, a bristling fortress, spitting lead in all directions. German pilots, peering through their Revi gun sights, saw bombers grow from specks to hulking targets, their closure speeds, leaving mere seconds to aim and fire. The turning point came when disciplined United States gunnery and P-51 escorts disrupted their attack runs, tracers tracked their dives, and Mustangs chased them through evasive turns. This forced the Luftwaffe to shift tactics, incorporating rocket salvos to scatter formations before closing for gun passes, a desperate bid to regain the initiative. The human cost was stark. United States gunners, often in their early 20s, endured freezing temperatures in open waist positions or cramped ball turrets, their hands gripping gun controls as fighters screamed in. They described the surreal calm of tracking a Bf-109 through their sights, the flash of its cannons, and the sudden lurch as their bomber jinked to avoid flak. Crews relied on intercom calls, clock positions shouted over engine noise to coordinate fire without breaking formation. A single, well-aimed burst could send a fighter spinning, trailing smoke. But multi-kill engagements were team efforts with waist, tail, and turret gunners converging on a target over 10 to 20 seconds. The idea of a lone gunner destroying 12 Bf-109 seconds in 4 minutes strained credulity, as it implied firing rates, traverse speeds, and hit ratios far beyond documented norms. United States records from 1944 emphasize collective defense over individual heroics. After-action reports require detailed accounts, rounds fired, enemy aircraft behavior, and observed hits cross-referenced with other crews and escort pilots. Claims of 12 kills by one gunner would have triggered intense scrutiny, gun camera footage if available, or witness statements from adjacent aircraft would be needed to confirm such a feat. The absence of such documentation in unit histories or intelligence summaries suggests the claim emerged from exaggerated retellings, not combat reality. The number that matters is verification. Only 70% of initial kill claims survived review as overlapping fire often led to double counting. The Luftwaffe's evolving tactics reflected their mounting desperation. By late 1944, they deployed heavier fighters like the Focke-Wulf 190 alongside Bf-109 seconds, some fitted with 30mm cannons to punch through bomber armor. Rocket attacks launched from 1,000 yards aimed to disrupt formations, but these were inaccurate and often countered by tighter American boxes and aggressive P-51 sweeps. United States escorts, with a combat radius of 400 miles, could now pursue attackers deep into German airspace, reducing the Luftwaffe's ability to regroup for repeated passes. This synergy gunnery discipline, paired with escort reach, eroded German air superiority, forcing pilots to take greater risks for fewer results. The air war over Germany in 1944 was a brutal contest of systems where the United States 8th Air Force's disciplined gunnery and long-range escorts clashed with the Luftwaffe's increasingly desperate tactics. The claim of a single B-17 gunner destroying 12 Messerschmitt Bf-109 seconds in 4 minutes, using a so-called suicidal tactic, emerged from this cauldron but lacks grounding in the meticulous records of the time. A B-17's 50-caliber machine guns firing 600 rounds per minute were formidable, but constrained by ammunition limits, 4,000 rounds per position, and the need for precise tracking at 800 yards. Such a feat would require extraordinary conditions, uninterrupted, firing perfect target tracking, and an implausible stream of attackers funneled into one gunner's arc. United States gunnery doctrine prioritized collective defense within the combat box, a formation spanning 1,000 yards at 25,000 feet, designed to overlap fields of fire. Gunners were trained to fire short bursts, 10 to 15 rounds, to conserve ammunition and prevent barrel overheating, which could jam a gun after 150 rounds of continuous fire. Cold line ammunition depleted after 4 minutes at full rate. A lone gunner achieving 12 kills in 4 minutes would need to fire nearly 1,000 rounds with near-perfect accuracy, traversing the gun across multiple targets, closing at 300 miles per hour, all while maintaining formation discipline. This scenario defies the mechanical and tactical realities of 1944 air combat. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, the American formations were a relentless wall of fire, with tracers arcing from multiple bombers as Bf-109 seconds dove in. German pilots gripping their controls saw the sky light up with 50-caliber rounds, forcing evasive maneuvers that disrupted their aim. The turning point came when disciplined gunnery and P-51 escorts turned their attacks into costly gambles. Mustangs chased them through dives and gunners tracked their paths with unnerving precision. This pressure forced the Luftwaffe to scatter, unable to sustain massed assaults. The idea of 12 Bf 109 seconds falling to one gunner in 4 minutes ignores this dynamic. German pilots rarely offered such a concentrated target. The human experience of United States gunners was one of intense focus amid chaos. In freezing turrets or open waist positions, they peered through ring and bead sights, tracking fighters that grew from specks to deadly shapes in seconds. Intercoms crackled with bearing calls 12 o'clock high, 3 o'clock level as crews coordinated fire. A successful engagement might see a Bf 109 hit by 2 or 3 gunners across multiple bombers, its wreckage trailing smoke as it fell. After action reports cross-checked with escort pilots and gun camera footage, rarely credited single gunners with multiple kills, as overlapping fire made attribution complex. A 12-kill claim would have generated mission debriefs, claim forms, and unit publicity, none of which exist in contemporary records. The Luftwaffe's tactical shifts further undermine the claim. By 1944, German pilots mixed rocket salvos with gun passes, launching from 1,000 yards to disrupt formations before closing to 500 yards for cannon fire. These tactics aimed to scatter bombers, but United States countermeasures, tighter formations, and P-51 escorts with a 400-mile combat radius limited their success. The number that matters is escort range. 400 miles allowed Mustangs to pursue attackers deep into Germany, reducing the Luftwaffe's ability to press sustained attacks. A single gunner facing 12 Bf 109 seconds in 4 minutes would imply a failure of escort cover and formation integrity, contradicting the documented synergy that defined American success. The claim's absence from official records, mission logs, intelligence, summaries, or unit histories points to its origin in post-war exaggeration. United States verification processes were rigorous claims, required corroboration from multiple sources, and inflated tallies were often reduced after review. Only 70% of initial kill claims were confirmed as overlapping fire led to double counting. A 4-minute 12-kill spree would have been a statistical outlier, requiring an ammunition expenditure rate, hit accuracy, and target availability that no single gun position could achieve. The story, while dramatic, functions as a myth shaped by retellings that amplified individual heroics over the procedural reality of collective defense. The air war over Germany in 1944 was a relentless grind where the United States 8th Air Force's bomber formations, shielded by disciplined gunnery and long-range escorts, steadily eroded the Luftwaffe's ability to mount effective assaults. The claim of a single B-17 gunner, destroying 12 Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds in 4 minutes, using a so-called suicidal tactic, stands as an outlier against the documented reality of collective defense. Each B-17, bristling with 10 50-caliber machine guns, formed part of a combat box spanning 1,000 yards at 25,000 feet, designed to create a near-impenetrable wall of fire. Gunners trained to fire bursts of 10 to 15 rounds at ranges of 800 yards relied on interlocking arcs to deter attackers, not individual heroics. The constraint was barrel endurance. Continuous firing risked overheating after 150 rounds, forcing pauses to maintain functionality. Cold-line barrels required cooling after 150 rounds. United States gunnery doctrine emphasized precision and coordination, with each gunner assigned a specific sector, waist tail, top turret, or ball turret to avoid gaps in coverage. A B-17's ammunition load, roughly 4,000 rounds per gun position, demanded careful management to last a 6-hour mission. Gunners tracked targets closing at 300 miles per hour, leading their shots to account for deflection and aircraft vibration. Training drilled clock position calls and smooth gun traverses, ensuring crews could respond to threats without breaking formation. Breaking ranks to pursue a suicidal tactic would expose adjacent bombers, inviting Luftwaffe fighters to exploit the gap, a scenario antithetical to 8th Air Force doctrine. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, the American combat box was a daunting target, its overlapping tracer streams forcing pilots to rethink their approach. Bf 109 pilots, climbing to intercept at 25,000 feet, saw bombers as a mass of glinting metal, their guns spitting fire in coordinated bursts. The turning point was clear, disciplined. United States gunnery paired with P-51 Mustangs chasing them through dives made massed attacks increasingly suicidal for the Germans. This forced the Luftwaffe to rely on sporadic rocket salvos and mixed-altitude approaches, diluting their impact. The myth of a single gunner's 12-kill spree ignores this. Dynamic German pilots wary of tracer fire rarely offered such a concentrated target for 4 minutes. The human toll of this aerial chess match was immense. United States gunners, often young men in their early 20s, endured freezing conditions in open waist positions or claustrophobic turrets, their hands numb on gun controls. They described the surreal moment when a Bf-109 filled their sights, its cannons flashing as it bore in head-on. Intercoms buzzed with urgent calls, 9 o'clock level, 12 o'clock high, as crews aligned their fire. A successful hit might see a fighter spiral away trailing smoke, but such victories were typically shared across multiple gunners and bombers. After-action reports cross-referenced with Escort pilot accounts and occasional gun camera footage showed that multi-kill engagements involved entire formations, not a lone gunner defying statistical odds. The Luftwaffe's tactical evolution reflected their dwindling resources. By late 1944, German commanders deployed heavier Focke-Wulf 192s alongside Bf 109s, some armed with 30mm cannons to penetrate bomber armor. Rocket attacks launched from 1,000 yards aimed to scatter formations, but their inaccuracy limited their effectiveness. United States countermeasures, tighter combat boxes, and P-51 escorts with a 400-mile combat radius neutralized these threats. The number that matters is escort range 400 miles, enabled Mustangs to pursue attackers deep into German airspace, disrupting their ability to regroup. A single gunner facing 12 Bf-109s in 4 minutes would imply a catastrophic failure of escorts and formation integrity, contradicting the synergy that defined American success. United States records from 1944 paint a picture of procedural rigor, not miraculous feats. Kill claims underwent intense scrutiny. Gunners logged rounds, fired hits, observed, and enemy behavior with claims cross-checked against other crews and intelligence data. Only 70% of initial claims were confirmed, as overlapping fire led to multiple gunners claiming the same kill. A 12-kill 4-minute spree would have required an ammunition expenditure rate nearly 1,000 rounds and hit accuracy far beyond a single gun's capability. No mission debriefs, claim forms, or unit histories from 1944 document, such an event suggesting the story emerged from post-war exaggeration, not combat reality. The true story lies in the collective, disciplined gunnery, relentless training, and escort pressure that ground down the Luftwaffe's strength. The air war over Germany in 1944 was a relentless test of systems where the United States 8th Air Force's disciplined gunnery and expanding escort coverage outmatched the Luftwaffe's increasingly desperate assaults. The claim of a single B-17 gunner destroying 12 Messerschmitt Bf 109s in 4 minutes using a suicidal tactic crumbles under the weight of tactical and mechanical realities. Each B-17, armed with 10 50 caliber machine guns, contributed to a combat box spanning 1,000 yards at 25,000 feet, creating a defensive network of overlapping fire. Gunners trained to fire bursts of 10 to 15 rounds at 800 yards prioritized precision to conserve ammunition and maintain barrel function. The constraint was heat buildup sustained. Firing risked jamming after 200 rounds. Cold line guns jammed after 200 rounds without cooling. United States doctrine demanded rigid formation discipline, with each gunner covering a designated sector, waist, tailtop, turret, or ball turret to ensure no fighter slipped through unopposed. A B-17 carried 4,000 rounds per gun position, enough for a 6-hour mission if managed carefully, but reckless firing could deplete stocks in minutes. Gunners tracked targets closing at 300 miles per hour, leading their shots to compensate for deflection and the bomber's vibration. Training emphasized smooth traverses and clock position calls, enabling crews to respond to threats without disrupting the combat box. A suicidal tactic breaking formation or firing indiscriminately would expose adjacent bombers, inviting Luftwaffe fighters to exploit the gap, a scenario incompatible with 8th Air Force strategy. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, the American formations were a lethal maze of tracer fire, with 50 caliber rounds arcing from multiple bombers. Bf 109. Pilots climbing to intercept at 25,000 feet saw the combat box as a fortress of glinting metal, its guns tracking their dives with deadly precision. The turning point was unmistakable. United States gunnery, backed by P-51 Mustangs with a 400-mile combat radius, made massed attacks a losing proposition. German pilots scattered under escort pressure, their attack runs disrupted by relentless pursuit. The notion of 12 Bf 109 seconds falling to one gunner in 4 minutes ignores this reality. German tactics avoided such concentrated exposure to a single gun position. The human experience aboard a B-17 was one of grueling focus. Gunners, often in their early 20s, sat in freezing turrets or open waist positions, their breath fogging at 25,000 feet. They described the sudden appearance of a Bf 109, its cannons flashing as it closed head-on, and the disciplined calm required to track it through a ring and bead sight. Intercoms buzzed with urgent calls 3 o'clock level, 12 o'clock high as crews aligned their fire. A successful hit might see a fighter spiral away trailing smoke, but such victories were collective, with multiple gunners across several bombers converging on a target over 10 to 20 seconds. The idea of a lone gunner achieving 12 kills in 4 minutes defies this teamwork, requiring an implausible hit rate and ammunition expenditure. United States after-action reports were methodical, requiring gunners to log rounds, fired hits, observed, and enemy behavior. Claims were cross-checked with other crews, escort pilots, and occasional gun camera footage, with only 70% of initial claims confirmed due to overlapping fire. A 12-kill claim would have generated extensive documentation, mission debriefs, claim forms, unit publicity, and intelligence summaries, none of which exist in 1944 records. The number that matters is verification. Only 70% of claims survived scrutiny, as multiple gunners often claimed the same kill. The absence of evidence for such an extraordinary event points to its origin in post-war myth-making, not combat reality. The Luftwaffe's tactical shifts underscored their weakening position. By late 1944, they deployed Fokker-Wulf, 190 seconds alongside Bf 109 seconds, some fitted with 30mm cannons to counter bomber armor. Rocket salvos launched from 1,000 yards aimed to scatter formations, but their inaccuracy and United States countermeasures, tighter combat boxes, and aggressive P-51 sweeps limited their impact. The 400-mile combat radius of Mustangs allowed escorts to pursue attackers deep into German airspace, disrupting their ability to regroup for repeated passes. This synergy, gunnery, discipline, and escort reach decimated Luftwaffe effectiveness, forcing pilots to take greater risks for diminishing returns. The true victory was systemic, relentless training, formation, integrity, and escort pressure, not a lone gunner's improbable feat. The air war over Germany in 1944 was a brutal testament to systems over spectacle, where the United States 8th Air Force's disciplined gunnery and long-range escorts systematically dismantled the Luftwaffe's ability to sustain effective attacks. The claim of a single B-17 gunner destroying 12 Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds in 4 minutes, using a suicidal tactic, collapses under scrutiny against the technical and tactical realities of the time. Each B-17, equipped with 10 50 caliber machine guns, formed part of a combat box spanning 1,000 yards, at 25,000 feet, designed to create a seamless wall of defensive fire. Gunners trained to fire controlled bursts of 10 to 15 rounds at 800 yards, prioritized accuracy to conserve ammunition and prevent barrel overheating. The constraint was ammunition management. 4,000 rounds per gun position had to last a 6-hour mission. Cold line ammunition lasted 6 hours with disciplined bursts. United States gunnery doctrine was built on collective defense, not individual heroics. Each gunner covered a specific sector, waist, tail, top turret, or ball turret, ensuring no gaps in the formation's firepower. Tracking a Bf-109 closing at 300 miles per hour required precise lead adjustments, accounting for deflection and the bomber's vibration. Training emphasized clock position calls and smooth gun traverses, allowing crews to engage threats without breaking the combat box. A suicidal tactic, deviating from formation or firing recklessly, would expose adjacent bombers, inviting Luftwaffe fighters to exploit the breach. Such a move contradicts the 8th Air Force's emphasis on formation integrity, which maintained a 70% sortie survival rate through coordinated defense. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, the American combat box was a deadly gauntlet, its overlapping tracer streams forcing pilots into evasive maneuvers that disrupted their aim. Bf. 109 pilots, climbing to intercept at 25,000 feet, saw bombers as a mass of steel and fire, their guns tracking dives with lethal precision. The turning point was stark. United States gunnery paired with P-51 Mustangs pursuing attackers across a 400-mile radius made massed assaults increasingly futile. German pilots scattered, unable to sustain coordinated strikes. The notion of 12 Bf-109 seconds falling to one gunner in 4 minutes defies this dynamic. Luftwaffe tactics avoided presenting such a concentrated target to a single gun position. The human reality for United States gunners was one of relentless focus under extreme conditions. In freezing turrets or open waist positions, young men in their early 20s gripped gun controls, their breath visible at 25,000 feet. They described the sudden swell of a Bf, 109 inches their sights, its cannons flashing as it closed head-on, and the disciplined calm needed to track it through recoil and vibration. Intercoms crackled with bearing calls 6 o'clock high, 9 o'clock level as crews aligned their fire. A successful engagement might see a fighter spiral away trailing smoke, but such victories were shared across multiple gunners and bombers, typically over 10 to 20 seconds. A lone gunner achieving 12 kills in 4 minutes would require an implausible hit rate, firing nearly 1,000 rounds with near-perfect accuracy, defying mechanical and tactical limits. United States after-action reports were rigorous, requiring gunners to log rounds, fired hits, observed, and enemy behavior. Claims were cross-checked with other crews, escort pilots, and occasional gun camera footage, with only 70% of initial claims confirmed due to overlapping fire. A 12-kill 4-minute spree would have generated extensive documentation, mission debriefs, claim forms, unit publicity, and intelligence summaries. Yet no such records exist in 1944 archives. The number that matters is verification. Only 70% of claims survived. Scrutiny, as multiple gunners often claimed the same kill. The absence of evidence for such an extraordinary event confirms its status as a post-war myth amplified by retellings that favored drama over fact. The Luftwaffe's decline was driven by systemic pressures, not singular feats. By late 1944, German pilots faced dwindling resources, deploying Focke-Wulf 190 seconds and Bf 109 seconds with heavier 30mm cannons to counter bomber armor. Rocket salvos launched from 1,000 yards aimed to scatter formations, but their inaccuracy was countered by tighter United States combat boxes and aggressive P-51 escorts. The 400-mile combat radius of Mustangs allowed pursuits deep into German airspace, disrupting Luftwaffe regrouping. This synergy, gunnery discipline formation, integrity, and escort reach decimated German air power, forcing pilots into riskier, less effective attacks. The true story of 1944 lies in this procedural mastery, not an unverified tale of a lone gunner's miraculous stand.